Ross on Sactown Sports.
2-0 for your San Francisco 49ers is heard right here on Sactown Sports, your home of the Niners, with tons of coverage. Make sure you go to SactownSports.com, as you should every morning, with your cup of coffee or tea or hot chocolate and Rita Meal Fragoso and all the other wonderful things we have on there when we keep you up to date. And Matt Barrows knows more about this team than anyone else, has covered them forever, whether it's the Bee and now for the Athletic, and he joins us right now talking about a 2-0 Niner team. Matt, good morning. How are you?
I'm well. How are you guys?
Hey,
great.
2-0, man. Right? I'm great. Wonderful. That's it. That's the whole interview. 2-0. Let's go.
It really could be. That's what determines everybody's mood during the week. The W or the L.
Well,
which is it?
And I know you are. I'm going to start the interview with my pet subject from the game. And I want to say in advance, I don't expect you're going to have a good answer, because I don't know that a good answer exists, but I just want to bounce it off your football mind. 30-20, late in the game, 4 seconds left, timeout called. Coach puts out the field goal unit. Now, we know 4 seconds. That's a minimum for a field goal. This will be the last play of the game. So this is not to win the game. This is to score 3 points. Now, as I'm sure you've heard, that is a big, big deal, because millions of dollars exchanged hands. The Niners were favored by 7.5. They win by 7. The Rams cover. Here's my thought exercise Jason and I were talking about earlier. Matt, if Sean was asked in the postgame, hey, were you aware of the line? And he said, I'll be honest, I was. And, we're not winning the game here, but I kind of wanted to reward everybody that bet on my team. So screw it. If we're going to do it, we're going to do it. And we kicked the field goal. Now, Matt, he didn't mess with the integrity of the game technically. He scored points. He did the thing. My question is this: does he get fined? And if he does, what is the infraction? I know. I'm sorry. It's 8 a.m., dude. I get it.
It's 8 a.m. I don't know. I mean, obviously there are all sorts of gambling and betting rules in the NFL. We've seen some guys on the Detroit Lions get suspended for this. So it exists. I don't. My thought is that he would never expose himself to that kind of punishment. I mean, my thought at the time was, okay, this guy thinks that there's going to be a second left on the clock after this, and that there can be some sort of miracle kickoff play, and that's his best way to win the game. My thought was that, okay, it's a short kick, and maybe that's why he thinks it's going to take less than 4 seconds. I mean, it was a pick your poison.
Right.
How are you going to die situation? And he chose that. I think it's as simple as that. I don't know if there was a lot of thought really going into it.
Matt, you've been to Los Angeles, to SoFi many times already, I'm sure. And I don't know if you were one of the 4 people there wearing blue, but we've seen it before, but that one stunned me. You saw it live. You were there firsthand. How overwhelming was the 49er contingency?
Yeah, it was like the Week 18 2021 game, the one that the 49ers absolutely had to win to get into the playoffs. I mean, the prediction going into the game was, okay, it's going to be about 65% 49ers fans, and that was based on ticket sales. It was way more than that. I mean, we're talking, over 80%. And sort of early on, before kickoff, pre-games, you get a sense of how many 49ers fans are going to be at these games, because they don't, they're not as big a part of the tailgate scene on the road as the home team, obviously. And so it was full of red then, and you kept waiting for the blue to show up, and it never did. I mean, it was just a smattering. One side of the stadium, I think it's I've got a little bit of east-west dyslexia. The 49ers, the sideline side, was 90% red. And then the other side had a little bit more blue in it. But it was very much a home game. I think any home team in the NFL would have been proud of that outpouring if you were the 49ers. So it was as impressive as I've ever seen it.
Matt Barrows of The Athletic joining us. What didn't impress me much was the Niner defense in the first half. It's the first time, really, other than the last few plays of the first half against the Steelers, first time this year we've really seen them give up some yardage in a chunk. How much of that to you was defensive lapses? How much of that was maybe the Rams are a lot better than people thought they were?
Yeah, I think it really skews to the latter of those two. I mean, the Rams were really good against the Seahawks in Week 1, and they got hot in the second half of that game. And they put together, God, I forget what the number is, but something like 6 drives of 9 or more plays against Seattle. And it was exactly what they were doing in the first half. And it was Matt Stafford dropping back. It was, as Fred Warner explained afterward, it was a bunch of high-low concepts where he had either a high target or a low target, and he picked which one to throw to. And he was on fire. I mean, both with his choices and with his throws, and it was automatic. And, I think the 49ers thought that, our defensive line looks so good in Pittsburgh that we can rely on that unit to really put some pressure on Stafford and drop everybody back and get into his throwing lanes and disrupt him in that way. And that wasn't happening. And like I said, he was picking the right spots, and the throws were great. And he really looked, I wrote about it in my story, he looked like a machine early on. He looked, like best quarterback in the league early on. And to their credit, the 49ers said, okay, we've got to do something to disrupt that, to get him off his rhythm. And that's when they shook things up. Their coverages were tighter, more man-to-man stuff in the second half, more blitzing, which everybody saw. And then he reverted back to the Matt Stafford that 49ers fans know and love. And that's the Stafford who gets, once he does get disrupted, made uncomfortable, he makes mistakes. And he made 2 big ones in the second half.
In the end, when Coach Shanahan, I know, takes the podium at the end, he's going to talk about injuries and the game as well. But injury-wise, I know Ayuk was looked at. How did the Niners get through the weekend on the health side of things?
I mean, it looks good. He talks at 10 this morning. Everything's condensed this week. It wouldn't surprise me if somebody came out of that game with a more serious injury than what we were thinking just afterwards. But it was Ayuk and Ambry Thomas. Thomas had a knee injury, and he actually did come back into the game, but I'm thinking on a short week he might not play, and that might reinforce this idea that, okay, the 49ers have finally found their nickelback, and that would be Isaiah Oliver. I thought that Oliver was really he and Fred Warner were the defensive MVPs of that half. He really stepped up and sort of showed his worth, and that's what the 49ers coaches were waiting for. It was a big surprise during training camp when they said that he's not the starter. We really haven't found a nickelback yet. We're still kind of looking. They paid all this money for him. He was a veteran, and I think the issue was he just wasn't playing to the speed that the rest of the defense was. He was kind of catching up, and it's taken him until the second game to do that. But he was put under the gun yesterday. A lot of pressure on him to perform, and to his credit, he stepped up. And I think in doing that, he kind of reached that speed that he needed to. And my guess is that he's going to be the guy against the Giants, and if he plays well there, it took longer than the 49ers thought, but he's finally kind of stepped into that role that they envisioned for him back in March.
Matt Barrows of The Athletic joining us. So we finally may have found the big Brock Purdy weakness. He has too much of a cannon. There were a good, 3 overthrows there. He addressed that after the game. How much of that to you is touch? Is any of that, and obviously you're not his doctor, is any of that maybe he's still trying to feel out the surgery from the offseason, or is it reads, routes? What's your take from all of that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I don't know what the answer is. I'm not sure he knows what the answer is. I mean, obviously he did miss the bulk of the off season because he was coming back from that elbow injury, and so he hasn't really had as much time with the Ayuks and the Deebo Samuels, the Jawan Jennings. These are the guys that he overthrew, and it's those deep balls that are always the last one to really get the right timing. So it could be that. It could just be sort of a flash in the pan. It could be something to do with the turf or the way that the stadium looks, and it's harder for him to gauge the depth. I don't know. Shanahan did note that those were not easy throws in terms of the read that he was making. A lot of times it wasn't his first option. So it may not be something he's practiced a lot, those types of throws. So bottom line is I don't know. I don't ding him as much as maybe other people did for those. He obviously should make them. But otherwise, I thought he played a pretty good game. I mean, this was I don't want to say go overboard and say it was playoff level intensity, but the Rams were playing really well. The 49ers were playing well. Each team had to deliver. And, I thought the drive of the game for the offense was the last one of the second quarter.
Mm-hmm.
The Rams had momentum. They were going to get the ball back to begin the second half, and everything was going their way. They were unstoppable on offense. They scored on every one of their first half possessions. So the 49ers had to score at the end of that half, and Purdy led them down there in a short amount of time and then scored that touchdown with his leg. So he needs credit for that. Not his best game, and we'll see how that deep ball timing goes. But I would not have bet on Brock Purdy overthrowing all of his targets in that game.
Matt Barrows joining us from the Folsom Lake Honda Hotline. Matt, maybe 2-3 weeks ago, you and I and Dave and all of us kind of talking about the kicking game as maybe a concern. Well, here's 3 more made kicks for Moody, including a 57-yarder. Does that kind of feel like it's resolved at the moment?
Yeah, it sure does. I mean, he looks like he did in training camp. And that was sort of what was sort of odd, is that the guy that everybody saw in the preseason, down in Las Vegas, missing the kicks, kind of wobbly on point after attempts, etc., was different than the one in training camp who, I want to say he missed two kicks all camp. And they put him through all sorts of different scenarios, and a lot of long kicks too. And that may have contributed to the quad injury that he was dealing with coming out of the preseason. He did a lot of kicking in the off season. I mean, and that includes all of the tryout stuff. The 49ers gave him a huge tryout, private workout back in, it was either February or March. And I think the half a dozen other teams did the same thing. So bottom line is that he kicked way more this off season than he ever has. And it led to some wear and tear that he never really had dealt with at Michigan. And to his credit, he seems to have gotten over it, and everything is back. And as you saw, he was doing the kickoffs as well, and mainly did okay on those, except for one that went stage left out of bounds, probably at a inopportune time that kind of led to that first half Rams momentum. But overall, a very strong game for him. And if you had the foresight, we'll call it that, to pick him up on your fantasy team, you're sitting pretty right now. You're sitting smugly with the rest of your opponents.
Matt Barrows with us. Last thing, I mean, we've got 2 more games to talk about coming up, but Jason and I were already looking ahead at the schedule. If you're a betting man and you look at their respective schedules, it sure looks like we're going to have a couple 4-0 teams at Levi Stadium when Dallas comes to town.
Yeah, and I think the Cowboys, as much as the 49ers have circled December 2 or December 3, whichever day they play the Philadelphia Eagles, I think the Cowboys have circled this game. So it's going to be a big deal for Cowboys and Cowboys fans, and it's certainly a big deal for the 49ers, although I got to think that the Philly game is the bigger one for them. But, sort of a clash of the two dominant teams in the NFC right now. I have a sense that at the end of the day, the Eagles will still be atop that group by the end of the regular season. But it's really those three teams that are sort of jockeying for position and jockeying for home field advantage, which is a huge deal. And I think that's going to be a big storyline when we eventually get to week 5.
That's Matt Barrows of The Athletic. Go to theathletic.com or download the app if you haven't already. I read it each and every morning. Some of our dear friends write for there, but also rankings and NBA and baseball, just pretty much everything you need. And what my favorite thing is, honestly, about it, other than the quality of the journalism, is it's just the app is really well laid out. They know exactly what they're doing. You can curate the coverage to what you want. Of course, I got Matt Barrows and Sam Amick right at the top each and every day. So we appreciate you, Matt. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Dave. Talk to you next week.
All right, bye-bye. Thanks, Jason.